Fact, there is more to reading a job description than just reading the job description. In today's video, I want to walk you through how to dissect all the information that you get given in a job ad to pull out what's really important to the company that you're applying to so that you can make sure that you highlight that stuff in your application. I've pulled up the job ads for 3 marketing and brand design roles in the tech industry. We're going to go through them together and I'll pull out what stands out to me and what I would do if I was applying to this job. I hope it's going to be really useful for you. This is sort of a follow-on from my top 5 mistakes that designers make in job applications video that a lot of you seem to really enjoy. So let's get on with it and take a look at some real world job ad examples. Okay, the first job up is for a brand design role at Webflow. You know I had to include a Webflow in this video. I love the company, so let's take a look at this job description. Webflow is a visual web development platform that empowers non-coders to create incredible experiences for the web. We're looking for a brand designer, web, to help us design and build beautiful websites for Webflow using Webflow, inspiring a rapidly growing community of designers along the way. Okay, so straight off the back, they're talking about websites as the core thing they want this person to design. Web is in the name. So already that is telling me that if I'm applying for this role, my portfolio better be filled with websites. As a brand designer, you'll use your extensive knowledge of web design, icon design, layout, typography, animation, and building sites in Webflow to develop and evolve Webflow's brand. Okay, so they're calling out web design, icon design, layout, typography, animation as core skills that will be needed for this role. So that's something that I would be wanting to make sure is visible in all of the projects that I have in my portfolio. If not in every project, at least that there's one project that represents my skills in each one of these categories. And remember, like I talked about in that top 5 mistakes video, when someone is reviewing your application to a job, they are not able to read every single word on your portfolio site and look at every single project in detail. So that's why I would make sure you pick a couple of projects that demonstrate all of these skills that they're looking for really well, and call the things out in your project descriptions, like highlight a piece of animation or interactivity that you did for it, highlight your typography decisions, go into detail about that and focus on that because that is what seems to be important to Webflow. And obviously building sites in Webflow. This is important. You need to have a project in your portfolio that is built in Webflow. It'd probably be a really good idea, honestly, if your portfolio site itself was built in Webflow to apply for this job. And yeah, got to make sure that you call this out. I would make sure that the first site in my portfolio was one that was built in Webflow for a client or a company as well. They talk here about ability to work with data and customer insights to contribute ideas to the team's goals. So for this, I would try and think about any times that I've used research and data that I've pulled from, how customers are currently interacting with our website and fed that into my design decisions. Call that out either in your cover letter or in the description of a project, and that'll show Webflow that you have that skill covered. They talk about collaborating again, but with teams outside of just the design team. And then they talk about team critique sessions too. So this is saying to me that, like, obviously Webflow is looking for a team player. I think that team player is one of those resume buzzwords that everyone says they are. So it's much better for you to show that you are. If there's a project where you collaborated with someone, perhaps from one of these other teams, not just the design team, it would be good to call that out as part of your project description. They talk here about having knowledge of Webflow. Obviously, we already talked about the fact that your portfolio should be built in Webflow. You should have a Webflow-like client or company project in there. We also say other no-code tools. I think it'd be really impressive if you could show a project where you connected Webflow to another no-code tool, even just using Zapier or something like that to send data somewhere or fetch data from somewhere for your Webflow site. I think that would show them that you have an understanding of this. They're calling out these things here again: icon design, layout, typography, and animation. So it's really clear that these are important key skills that Webflow wants to add to their team. So please make sure that you call those out in your projects. This line here really stands out to me as a fellow in-house designer as well. And I think that we can sort of see it up here as well when they talk about collaborating with other designers. In this role, I would bet that you're not really picking out new color palettes and starting brands from scratch very often. Webflow is a very established brand already, and they need someone who is comfortable working within those existing guidelines. So I would avoid showing too many projects in your portfolio that are all about creating the brand from scratch. And I would try to at least feature 1 or 2 where you were iterating on something that existed. That would give them the confidence that you would be comfortable working within existing brand guidelines. Just something to be aware of. And having a growth mindset and eager to learn new things, this could be evident in a blog that you have on your website, or maybe it's something that you specifically decide to call out the latest thing that you're learning in your cover letter, just to show them that you have that vision. Let's move on now and look at this job ad here on Dribbble for a senior brand designer at Pilot. It's always really important to read this thoroughly so that you can call out anything that you personally can relate to it. Me, for example, I can relate very strongly to Webflows. I don't relate as strongly to Pilot, so I would be kind of scraping the barrel to talk about this, but I could perhaps talk about my experience at Xero, which was an accounting software company. So even though the mission isn't something that I feel particularly close to, I do have experience in this world of finance and accounting, and so I'd want to make sure to call that out. So just have a think as you read company descriptions in job ads you're applying to. How do you relate to their mission? How does your experience, how could that help towards their mission? They're looking for a senior brand designer. Senior is called out, so we'll see later on what that means to them. To help build the future of the financial back office, work with stakeholders to tell Pilot's brand narrative through design. Okay, see, that's already a much more of a senior role job description, I guess, than creating assets. It's no, you're telling the brand narrative through design. As a key member of the design team, you work to define and evolve Pilot's brand visuals and strategy. Okay, so we'll see how this plays out through the rest, but already I'm seeing here that this is a difference from the Webflow one, where in that they were specifically saying we're looking for someone comfortable to work within existing guidelines, whereas this one here is really talking about someone who has strong brand experience and can help to define and evolve and sort of form that brand. It makes me feel like it's much more malleable and more open perhaps than Webflow's is. Less defined. That's why they need help with defining it. In key responsibilities, they talk about owning the web experience. First off, it's the first item on this list. They do say other customer touch points as well, but this tells me that the website, pilot.com, is probably going to be the main thing that you'd work on this role. And so therefore, I would want to make sure that the portfolio that you would submit to this would be mostly web design. This is interesting here, up-level Pilot's internal and external brand. So if you had a story or a way you could speak to doing this at other companies, I know for me at Xero, I did a lot of internal brand design work to, help unite the team around our brand company values in particular, then that might be a really good thing to call out here. Ideating concepts, developing visual identity platform systems. Unlike the Webflow one, I really would advise you here to make sure your portfolio has an example of a project where you developed the system of the identity yourself. Showing the details of how you delivered that, I guess, would help them to visualize what you could provide to Pilot as part of this role. Developing and managing the production. Okay, so this is interesting. This is showing me that they really want someone with good organizational skills as well to manage this pipeline of work. That'd be something to specifically call out in your cover letter, how you've handled this at previous roles. They're also noting here a bunch of other different types of output, I guess this is the other customer touch points that they talked about up here. So perhaps for this job application, I would advise having some extra stuff in your portfolio, not just websites. Just websites would be perfect, I think, for the Webflow one. But for this one here, you'd want to show how you apply visuals to other things too, so they can make sure that you have that skill set. This bit here is also really related to that organizational side of things. They want someone who can be across a lot of projects and working cross-functionally too. They specifically talk about brainstorming, sketching, and prototyping. So maybe this is a good reason to show a full process of a project in your portfolio, not just the finished product, but show them how you got started, show them how you brainstormed and sketched and all that. And if not in your portfolio, have that prepared to talk to them about in the interview, even if they don't ask. In this qualifications part, they specifically call out experience developing branding systems. So that's been mentioned a few times now. So definitely make sure that that would be part of an application here, is showing how you developed a system around a brand. And then they call out layout, typography, iconography, and illustration. So I would hope that you could show those through the work that you have in your portfolio, through these types of things and the website. And they call out excellent visual, verbal, and written communication skills too. So I think this is important for every job, honestly, but because I've specifically called it out, you need to make sure that you're communicating well, that your application is well written, well formatted, with key things bolded and stuff like that to make it easier for them. All those are signs of that someone's paid attention to the communication. Once again, they're calling out organization too, which I already had seen through several of these other points in the responsibilities. But yeah, this would definitely be something that I'd recommend talking about in the cover letter in the application for this job, because it might not be super visible in the work in your portfolio, but you need to tell them what experience you have in this and why you could do this well. Okay, let's move on to our last example here, but I hope that was useful already to sort of see the differences between Webflow and Pilot and how I would sort of tailor my experience and talk about different things in each one. Let's take a look here at this lead marketing designer role for SamCart. So they're an e-commerce company and they say they're looking for a lead marketing designer to take our current website, landing pages, ads, and brand to the next level. So they've got something already and they're looking for someone to iterate on it. The ideal candidate should have an eye for clean and artful web design. They've called this out specifically, so I would make sure that the first project in my portfolio was a super clean and artful, which I could be interpreted a lot of different ways, and I would perhaps check out the SamCart website to try and get an idea of maybe what they might mean by artful, and pick a project that best sort of like gets closest to that to show them as the first one, because the first project in the portfolio is usually the one that reviewers are going to click on first. Not always, but usually. So I'd make sure that's there because they have specifically called it out on this line. They say that this role will help us crush quarterly and yearly revenue goals. So if you could speak to any ways that your work in previous companies has helped towards revenue, that would really help. Even if you don't have a specific example of your work leading to that, I think that talking about how at a previous company you as a team crushed a revenue goal could help to have that in the cover letter, because that would be an immediate sign that you read this job description in detail. You'd be surprised at how many people don't do that, so that would help your application to stand out. So they call out proven work experience as a web designer as the first thing on their list, just like they talked about clean and artful web design up here. So again, we're looking for a portfolio with web designs as the core, skill set that makes it up. But they also talk about demonstrable graphic design skills. So for this one, just like with the Pilot job ad, I would make sure that I had some other things in the portfolio as well to show, not just web designs. I think a focus on web with a smattering, is that a word, of other design skills in there too. They're specifically calling out a process of creating wireframes, storyboards, user flows, etc. So just like I would recommend in the Pilot one, maybe for at least one project, show the full process of the wireframes, etc. in there so that they can see that you have that, or at least be prepared to talk about it in the interview. They're specifically calling out some tools here, so I'm going to assume that these are the tools that their current design team uses right now. I wouldn't self-select out of this if your main experience is in Figma or in XD or a different tool, but this just gives you an idea of probably the design tools that you'll be working with if you joined the company. Designers should be able to design in any tool really. It's the process that matters, not the tool. They talk about proficiency in code here for rapid prototyping in particular. So if you have that, if perhaps there is a design you did that you also built a prototype for and then that's in your portfolio, that would be a great thing to call out and to make one of those like core projects to click on. They're talking about hitting deadlines, fast-paced team, and this combined with this sort of like crush goals thing is giving me a vibe that it's like it is a really fast-paced work environment. So if that's something you've thrived in the past, then I would call that out in the cover letter in particular, and I don't know, talk about how it energizes you or excites you or whatever. For me personally, it might scare me off applying for this, honestly. But hey, that's just me. Something else interesting here is they talk about trends in particular, in trends, techniques, and technologies. So this is something you could demonstrate through, perhaps it's your Dribble account, you're trying out new stuff a lot of the time, perhaps it's a blog on your site, or maybe it's just something you call out in your cover letter. It's like, oh, this is something that I'm really interested in right now and experimenting with. That could be a way to get that in there. Then they say that 2D and 3D animation experience is a bonus. So if you have this, absolutely make it obvious in your portfolio. Call it out in your cover letter too, but because this is a visual thing, definitely demonstrate it in the portfolio. For responsibilities, we're going to be executing all stages from concept to final handoff, conceptualize original web design ideas. So again, web design being called out here as a core thing. And they say that brings simplicity. So this combined with there are mention of clean up here means, you know, you can sort of get an idea of the sort of style of design they're looking for that brings this user friendliness to complex roadblocks. So anywhere in your projects, you can talk about solving complex pathways and making it really simple for the user. That will be great like language to use and something to call out to show them that you match up with this. Again, here they're talking about the full process. We already touched on that. They talk about presenting and defending designs to peers and executive level stakeholders. This idea of defending a design as well sounds a little intense to me. But this is a great chance to say in a cover letter or talk about your role in the company and how you worked closely with any executive level stakeholders. Like for me, if I was applying to this, I could probably talk about how in every company I've worked at, I've had a good relationship with the CEO and enjoyed talking about design ideas with them, something like that. It's true, by the way. So just like in the pilot job ad, you'd probably benefit from having a project that shows how you would set up these design guidelines and get other people on board with using them. So that is a look at 3 different job ads from 3 different companies and 3 slightly different approaches that I would take to applying to them if I was going to do that. I hope that was useful for you to see what stands out to me when reading through a job application, what I pay attention to, what I call out, and how I'd work that into the way I set up my portfolio or what I write in my cover letter. Anytime you can make sure that your cover letter or, you know, whatever communication it is that you're having with the company when applying to this job touches on the very clear things that they've laid out in their list of responsibilities and expectations of this role, the more that they will make a match in their mind between what they need from this role and you. And that's what you want to be creating, right? Having written a marketing designer job description myself, I can tell you that everything in these job ads has been very carefully considered. And so try and use similar wording or just make sure you're calling out these skills as much as you can. I noticed that the Webflow one, just like we do at ConvertKit, actually talked about even if you don't meet 100% of the qualifications, you should still consider applying. And that's absolutely true. You still definitely have a chance of getting a role even if you can't demonstrate every single little thing that they're asking for, because a big part of what a company is hiring for is not just where you are right now, it's where you have the potential and the room to grow into as well. So keep that in mind, but obviously as much as you can call out parts of your past experience and skill set that align with the job description, you should. I hope this was useful. If you'd like me to do it again sometime, please let me know by leaving a comment or calling out any different things that you noticed in going through these job descriptions. Would you have taken a different approach to me? Let me know in the comments. Please give the video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it though, and hit subscribe if you're new around here, because I make new videos about design and design careers and that whole world every single week. And hopefully I'll see you back here for the next one. Have a good day. See you next time. Bye.